Hello, everyone. Welcome back. How's it going? Today, I wanted to do a reading update. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm just going to talk about some books I've been reading over the past month and some books I'm currently working on. So let's get started. So, the first book I'll talk about was a reread. This was American Prometheus, the book on Robert Oppenheimer, who ran the Manhattan Project. Of course, this book was the basis for the film Oppenheimer from a few years ago. And this rereading it, this is really probably one of the great books of the past. I would say 50 years of biography and American history, as far as the depth of the research the authors went. And I should mention the authors were K. Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. Spent years working on this book, and we learned a lot about the American scientific community during the early mid 20th century. It paints a very complex portrait of Oppenheimer and why he did what he did, what made him such an effective scientist, and why he was chosen to lead the Manhattan Project, despite some caveats many in the government had. And yeah, so we learned a lot about nuclear science, quantum physics, and how these theories were beginning to have practical, horrifying uses, as they say, with the construction of bombs and that. So and then the second half of Oppenheimer's life, which his loyalty was put under question during the Red Scare era of the 1950s, and how someone who was a hero, certainly at the end of World War II, and how eventually his security clearance was stripped away, which was a major insult, and how tragic and sad the final years of Oppenheimer were. So if you've watched the film, there are many scenes in the film, aspects of the film that were taken directly from the book, but there's also a lot in this book that was not in the film, and it's interesting to compare and see what choices were made in that regard. But yeah, this is really a highly recommended book. So that was American Prometheus. And let's see, you might notice a theme as I'm going through the books here. This was a library book. This was a modern library of the works of Jonathan Schell. Jonathan Schell was a journalist who wrote about many things. He was famous during the Vietnam War, or was well known for his work as a journalist during the Vietnam War, and came to prominence as well in the 1980s for writing about nuclear weapons, defense policies, and the morality of nuclear weapons and the arms race, and was maybe not a name I hear a lot today, but certainly in the 1980s his book made an impact. And this modern library has, or it's not modern library, I should say, it's the Library of America. Sorry about that, Library of America. And this has The Fate of the Earth, which was the book that I read that was in here. And The Fate of the Earth was published in the early 1980s. And just to give what the flap says about it, The Fate of the Earth, published in 1982, shook the nation and the world to attention. An immediate international bestseller, it dramatically illuminated the stakes involved in abstract discussions of survivability and the balance of power, prompting fierce criticism from foreign policy hawks, electrifying public consciousness, and leading many readers to question the sanity and the inevitability of the status quo. In the wake of its publication, an emboldened nuclear freeze movement would ultimately prevail upon the Reagan administration to alter its rhetoric and to pursue arms reduction talks. So, The Fate of the Earth is a book that is about the unthinkable, what the world would look like after a full nuclear exchange. And it's a very powerful book, a very grim book that might give you nightmares, but I think a book, an important book, nevertheless, where he takes you through this is what the first 30 seconds would be like, what the next minute would look like, and just takes you through, how horrifying it would be a full nuclear exchange, and that aspect of it. It gets into ecology and how it would be catastrophic to the environment. The human cost goes without saying, and then it gets into philosophy a lot too, and morality, as far as the fact that governments are stockpiling these weapons that would be able to erase all of human history, destroy not just human life, but all life on Earth. And I know you get into debates on that as far as what that, whether all life would be destroyed or not, whatever. It would basically be the end of humanity for the most part, but also I think every day of living with that reality in early 1980s, we really are hitting a fever pitch of anxiety about the Cold War and the arms race and everything. So, and the nuclear freeze movement was, once again, not talked about a lot today, but was very important in the 1980s as far as turning the tide of the arms race and raising public consciousness about how dire the stakes really were when it came to nuclear weapons. So I would recommend this book to anybody who wants to learn about the topic. I mean, it's not the prose is so well, but it's, like I said, a lot of it's quite grim in that regard. It's similar to the book on Hiroshima by John Hersey. It's similar to that book, only this one takes it into the realm of morality and philosophy. And what's even more haunting, I think you read this, is that we live in the same world today, in some ways an even more dangerous world with more weapons, more arms races, and we're not seeing a lot of, I think, pushback to that in some ways. I know there's a lot of concerns now, but this book is just as relevant and just as terrifying as it was then. The other two books in here I didn't really look at. I kind of skimmed. One is called The Abolition, which is about practical ways for disarmament, and The Unconquerable World gets into conflict resolution and stopping wars and things like that. So yeah, Library America, I would highly recommend this, especially if you're interested in highly existential issues of war, peace, and nuclear weapons. So, okay, enough on that one. So, I also started reading. Let's see, if there's anything else along those themes I want to do. Oh, I'll talk about this one I'm reading on a Kindle, kind of in the similar vein. This book is called Way Out There in the Blue: Reagan, Star Wars, and the End of the Cold War by Francis Fitzgerald. And this is a book about Reagan's 1983 speech, where he proposed the Star Wars, as it was called by the media, the Star Wars program, to build a missile defense shield that would protect America from missile attack. And while the technology for such a thing was way, way off, I mean, we're 40, 50 years out, and we're not even near having anything like a shield in that regard, at least as far as I know. But the book is more about the power of rhetoric and how Reagan was able to be persuasive that such a thing was possible, and how his administration used rhetoric effectively in that regard. So yeah, I've read the first chapter or so, which is, this is really a deep analysis of Reagan's psychology as well, and as far as really getting to, it appears like he didn't really understand a lot of the intricacies of foreign policy. Fitzgerald is arguing that what Fitzgerald knew, or what Reagan knew, was how to use language effectively to convince people. So yeah, an interesting book on, like I said, another kind of Cold War related issue. So yeah, way out there in the blue. And I'm also reading. I started this science fiction, reading some science fiction to Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. This is the first book in his Mars trilogy, which is about human, terraforming Mars, creating a civilization on Mars, which tries to really be a hard using science in a way to make this scenario plausible. So I guess it's considered hard science fiction in that way. So yeah, I've started this book before. I think for whatever reason I got sidetracked into other things, but I really want to try to complete the trilogy. I was at the local library and they had the other two books in the trilogy, Green Mars and Blue Mars. So I want to try to get through these at some point, and because I've always wanted to read that trilogy. I've read some of Kim Stanley Robinson in the past, and like I said, always interesting to. I think the Ministry of, trying to remember the book that he wrote. Look up the title here. See his books, Ministry of the Future, yeah, which was about global warming and kind of looking into the future as far as how governments would react to that. So very interesting sci-fi that's very much based in science. So yeah, looking forward to completing those. Let's see quickly a few more things. I'm rereading Neuromancer. I want to read more cyberpunk science fiction, and I had read this book before, but I got the audio of it, audiobook. So I wanted to maybe doing the audio version of this will make the cyberpunk world of William Gibson come alive better for me. So yeah, Neuromancer is one I'm reading, and let's see, this was another one I picked up, used book, The Ministry of Truth, the biography of George Orwell's 1984. So this book is partly a biography of Orwell and what led him to write 1984, his life experiences, and everything that was going on in the world that led to the creation of the book, some of the influences that went into the book. And it's also on the afterlife of 1984. Of course, Orwell died around the time the novel was published. So we don't have a lot of what Orwell had to say about the book as it entered into the culture and continued to be read through the 50s, 60s up till today. So it's also kind of a cultural history of how we have interpreted 1984. And as I said, obviously in 2025 the book is still cited all the time and is really a manual for figuring out how totalitarian systems work. And Dorian Lynskey was the author of this book. So yeah, highly recommend that book if you're interested in Orwell in 1984. And let's see, another one, I think this might be the last one I'll mention. This is a biography of Bruce Lee that came out this year. This is called Bruce Lee and the Making of Asian America, Water, Mirror, Echo by Jeff Chang. And this is there's been many books on Bruce Lee, but this is like I said, a modern biography, but also a cultural history of Asian America, okay, of what it means to be Asian American, and how the icon of Bruce Lee and what it meant for him to be Asian American, and just about the huge cultural influence that Bruce Lee had. So yeah, I'm a little bit into this. It's really well written so far, and just a really detailed biography, but also a lot of cultural history as well. going into the book. So this was a library book too. I was able to pick up, which they had. So yeah, yeah. So those are some books I've been reading, have read, and are reading now at the moment. So I guess mostly nonfiction and some science fiction has been my main focus over the past month. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on any of these books or anything, be great to hear them. If you have any, opinions or ideas or anything. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.